This is the Reading Instruction Show. I'm your host, Dr. Andy Johnson. Title of today's show is called Selective Umbrage, Emily Hanford is an Alexa app. Now, in my podcast, YouTubes, and online articles, I often use colorful metaphors for things or people. For example, penguins or phonics penguins are people who are obsessed with phonics instruction, who think that phonics is the solution to everything. Clowns are people who think they know a lot about reading instruction when in fact they know very little. Number monkeys are people that think that all learning can be quantified, who think that testing is the solution to an imaginary literacy crisis. We need to enumerate our children, you see, to see how far away they fall from average. That is essential. Not toadies, educational consultants whose knowledge is for sale, whose recommendations just seem to coincidentally align with those who are paying them. And zealot. The term zealot can be used to describe a person who is unwilling to make concessions or to change one's way of thinking, even when faced with overwhelming evidence. Zealotry is the best way to describe the impetus behind the current science of reading movement. Under the guise of good reading instruction, quote, they fabricated a reading crisis. They've used this to create laws that disempower teachers. And teachers are forced to use scripted one-size-fits-all reading programs that have no basis in research, but are instead firmly enmeshed in I thinkisms. Schools are forced to purchase for-profit teacher professional development programs that have no basis in legitimate research. Collecting data is different from research, people. And instead of investing in things that could actually impact learning, hundreds of millions of dollars are being wasted to pay for expensive commercial products and services. Now, of course, I realize that not every person who aligns with the current science of reading fad disregard scientific principles. Not literally, not every single one of them. It's a bit of hyperbole, you see. But from my experience, it seems a great many of them seem to do so. And so not all science of reading enthusiasts are zealots, but a great many certainly display zealous behaviors. And if it walks like a zealot and quacks like a zealot, well, it's probably a zealot. Now let's look at polite words. It brings me no joy to have to use colorful metaphors. Okay, it brings me a little joy. For years, many of us have tried to use reason and research to make our case. But along comes Emily Hanford, a journalist with a ready-made platform who just says stuff. And because of the emotional tug, people believe her. And listening to a radio documentary that provides simple answers is much easier than reading and assimilating a bunch of scholarly work with complexity and nuance. So when reason and research no longer work, a reasonable person tries other things. So yes, occasionally I step out from behind my timid little third-person objective voice. Yes, occasionally I use metaphors and analogy to create memorable images that seem to get through some of the haze of all the politely worded blabber. But the baseless accusations coming out of the politely worded blabber are much more offensive than a couple of my two-bit metaphors. Making teachers and professors public piñatas to whack about simply because they can't whack back is much more offensive than a couple of my poorly worded analogies. And tearing away at the fabric of public education and teacher autonomy is much more offensive than the names that I have given to the fabric terrors. What about the children? They say in their soft, polite, pleading voices. What about the children? We must protect the children. Yes, we must, which is exactly why some of us fight so hard to get research-based reading instruction, along with legitimate professional development and teacher autonomy and better teacher pay back into our schools and classrooms. Now, Louisa Moats regularly says that teachers are not knowledgeable. They're unprepared. They don't know how to teach, and professors aren't teaching the right things. Might that be just a little bit offensive? And compare what I say to the subtle and often not so subtle statements and inferences. Teachers are ignorant. Teachers aren't very smart. Teachers are lazy. Teachers don't know how to teach reading. Teachers need to be told, need to be forced to teach reading a certain way. We can't trust teachers. We need to hold them accountable. We need to disempower them. Literacy professors are ignorant and teach the wrong thing. Teachers have an agenda other than helping each child develop his or her full potential. Professors have an agenda other than educating students. I have yet to meet a professor with an agenda. Literacy professors aren't doing their job. We need to mandate certain things and outlaw other things in their courses, like they do here in the state of Minnesota. Unbecoming of a literacy professor? I know it's unbecoming of a literacy professor to make broad generalizations and to use the metaphors that I do, and I know I should be better than that. But I'm not. I'm not better than that at all. In fact, I'm probably worse than that. So let's look at the metaphor. In a recent show, I referred to Emily Hanford as the Alexa app of reading instruction. And this was a metaphor, a common literary device in which one makes a comparison without using the words like or as, and it creates an image. When we say America is a melting pot, we don't literally mean there's a big pot bubbling someplace. Metaphors create images and communicate things that just mere words can't get to. I compared Emily Hanford to an Alexa app. Is it an apt comparison? Well, she says things without recourse. You can't trust her as a valid source of information. She presents things without context, very much like my Alexa app. Now, my Alexa app said that her net worth was $15 million. $15 million. Interesting, yes? Do I trust this information? Do I think it's accurate? Not necessarily. Maybe my Alexa app is the Emily Hanford of internet information. Now, recently, someone took great umbrage to my use of metaphor. I was said to have called her an Alexa app. Oh, the horror! But I didn't call her an Alexa app. I didn't say Emily Hanford is an Alexa app. But if I wanted to call her a name, I certainly could do far better than calling her an Alexa app. However, the person took great umbrage, but it seems to be selective umbrage. It seems to be something else disguised as umbrage. It seems to be false umbrage or pseudo umbrage. I mean, how could you possibly be all umbrated by somebody using a metaphor to compare somebody to an Alexa app? And here's where the selective umbrage kicks in. Consider how teachers have been demeaned and impugned by Emily Hanford, Louisa Moats, and the Science of Reading movement. Their pretty words may not have contained metaphors, but think for a minute what's been said about classroom teachers and public education. Think of the constant false narrative that they've had to endure for years. That's much worse than calling someone an Alexa app. Selective umbrage. Let's take a look at the analogy. An analogy is another literary device that uses something familiar to help you understand something new. Dog is to bone as Andy is to euphonium. We know dogs love bones. The image of a dog greedily chewing on a bone is created in our head. So we can assume that Andy loves the euphonium as much as a dog loves bones. You shoehorn the new thing inside the known thing, and understanding is enhanced. Now, Emily Hanford is a journalist. Journalists just write things. People tell them things and they write it down. There's no checks and balances. There's no peer review. Things are often pulled out of context so that they're technically correct but conveniently inaccurate. Journalists write stuff. This is what they do. And in this context, I said you can't ask a skunk not to stink, meaning that a journalist is going to do what journalists do, just as a skunk does what a skunk does. I used an analogy. I guess I could have said you can't ask a bunny not to hop or a snake not to slither, but it just doesn't roll off the tongue quite the same. Andy is to writing as monkeys are to throwing poop. Chihuahuas are small and make a lot of noise barking at things. Andy is the chihuahua of reading instruction. Metaphors and analogies are effective in conveying certain information because of the visual image created. Now, if you want to take umbrage at something, take umbrage at the money wasted, the public money, to pay for commercial products and services. Take umbrage at overcrowded classrooms and poor teaching conditions. Take umbrage at low teacher pay and lack of legitimate professional development opportunities for teachers. Take umbrage at tax cuts that make tuition costs rise. Take umbrage when the public cannot afford to go to our public colleges and universities. Take umbrage at the lack of health care, at the food insecurity, and the mass shootings that occur. These are umbrage-worthy things. Yes, I am an offensive, mouthy little man, but I am offensive and mouthy for a purpose. Save your umbrage for things that are truly umbrage-worthy. This has been the Reading Instruction Show. I'm your host, Dr. Andy Johnson. Have a nice day.